Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Preference. We are glad you made it. The Supreme Court ruling, is it going to put more money in your pocket? That's what we're going to dive into. We found a great article here that we want to jump into from Military Times by Leo Shane III. He does a lot of veteran coverage, and I'm happy to go through this. We're going to do this round robin thing again, kind of read through the article, give you our 2 cents along the way. What our interpretations are, and see if we can find any nuggets and turn over any stones. So with that, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. We truly appreciate it. Let's jump into it here. The headline is, will the Supreme Court's GI Bill ruling mean more money for vets? That is the question, and what a good question it is, because anytime we talk about money, going into our pockets is a good day. So let's jump into it. Tuesday's Supreme Court ruling on veterans education benefits could provide an extra year of federal tuition payments to millions of student veterans. But when officials might start doling out these payments, it all remains unclear. So when is this act? Look, the ruling just happened here in the middle of April. When is it going to go into effect? What are your guys' guesses on this? Chris, let's start with you. Just jumping into this so far. Great ruling.
Yeah, look, I mean, we talked a little bit about this in the last segment about how promising this ruling is, and how really one-sided, 7-2, it really was. And we have to expect it's just going to take time for some of this to settle in. We will keep everybody posted on anything that has to do with how one would file for this, or how one would get reimbursed for it. It does trouble me a little bit. And again, sometimes this is maybe a little bit of creative liberty from the author of the article when they said officials might start doling out the payments. When the officials might start doling out the payments, if at all, remains unclear. Hopefully that's just a little bit of dramatic effect. It seems pretty clear from the ruling that some rules for eligibility will probably be coming soon, and then payments shortly thereafter, hopefully. Randy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the question they ask at the outset, will the Supreme Court's GI Bill ruling mean more money for vets? And I think the answer is yes for some vets. I think it's pretty clear. If you were both bought in to the Montgomery GI Bill and then served in, if you will, that's kind of my term that I'm making up here, for the post 9/11 GI Bill, then you've got that 12 months of extra benefit that, had been denied to you by the VA previously. I think Leo, the author of this article, is right in having some skepticism. We all know the federal budget cycle is kind of a mess, and things aren't always as clear when and how dollars flow through. But the intent of the Supreme Court here seems pretty clear to me. If you bought into the Montgomery GI Bill and then earned in to the post 9/11 GI Bill, and it exhausted that 36-month benefit window, it looks like you've got 12 more months of benefits that can be used here. So there might be some questions. What if I used, this portion, then that portion? And I think there might be some individual cases that apply. But to answer the question in the headline, I think the answer is yes. Jason, I'll kick it back over to you to keep us going.
Yeah, I think so too. And here's a question that we haven't talked about. I wonder, once the VA figures out who actually has Montgomery GI Bill open to them, right? So that's a whole fiasco in itself. So once they figure that out, now all of a sudden you have this benefit that reappears. And maybe timeframes get reinstated. Who knows, right? Are you going to be able to sell, or not sell, but give that to a family member? You know what I'm saying? So as you could, like with the, when you move over your educational benefits to a spouse or a dependent, I wonder if they're going to allow that to happen with this Montgomery GI Bill. You got 12 months. You don't need the education, but you got 12 months that you earned. Can you then give it to your spouse? Could you give it to your son, your daughter, right? I'm curious. We'll see what happens. So let's move on through the article here. In the 7-2 ruling, justices said that veterans can use both the post 9/11 GI Bill benefits and the Montgomery GI Bill benefits to pay for college classes if they meet eligibility for both programs. Which this is just a blown mind for anybody who hears that for the first time, because we all, well, not all of us, but a lot of us remember you got to pick. You got to pick which one you're going to use. So to hear now, today, that you can use both your post 9/11 GI Bill benefits and your Montgomery GI Bill benefits to pay for college classes if you meet the eligibility for both programs is just an amazing sentence by itself. Now, how do you think, Randy, this will impact the lives of those veterans who can utilize this new ruling once it actually gets adopted by the VA?
It gives them options, I think. Again, we have to see how some of these rules are implemented by the VA and what it looks like. But at a minimum, I'm comfortable saying that a lot of veterans are going to have an additional option here if they want to pursue their education further. Now, great question. Can we pass that on to my son, my daughter, whoever, a spouse, whatever that may be? I don't know the answer to that quite yet. But I think there is going to be some more options there, and those options are going to come in the form of monetary assistance through the VA. So that's my take on it. I think we'll just have to wait and see, and we should use, and in my opinion, it's important that we engage with our veteran service organizations, the American Legion, name them all, whatever that may be, to voice to the Veterans Affairs Department that we do not want them to adopt this with the most narrow interpretation they can possibly come up with. The intent here is we have folks in need, we have folks that have earned a benefit, and that should be provided fairly to the veteran community. So don't forget about your veteran service organizations and up-channeling your voice through them so the VA interprets this in a fair manner. Over to you, Chris.
Yeah, they're saying it could impact up to 1.7 million veterans. So that's a pretty large target group there. The lawyers are also saying that the VA is interpreting and looking at this, and if they take a very limited or myopic view, that there could be more legal fight ahead. So as promising as this benefit is, it does seem that there's still a little bit of fight that could be left over it, which would mean delayed payments. And so, it's funny because if you go back to, when I was in, there weren't a whole lot of computers. It was all manual files, and I'm sure all of that is retained somewhere. But I think the learning here is that if you're a veteran and you believe that you would be in this cohort, you should start digging into your old Army trunks where you keep a lot of your old paper files, and start collecting, as much information and data, and reaching out, using the tools to see what the Army or the Navy or the Air Force or any of the branches have on you. Because I learned not that long ago that it was a lot different than what I had. And so there's probably a little bit of legwork that you're going to have to do to make sure that all the records are straight too.
That's true. Good point, Chris, because look, if the VA doesn't get your VA compensation claim right, what's going to say that they're going to get this right? So, the more information that you could dig up to have to back up your circumstances, the better. So I'm going to dive into this a little bit more, go through it a little bit, and then we'll pass it around some more. So let's dive back into it. Veterans Affairs officials had required veterans attending school to choose one and forfeit the other. But in the opinion of the majority of the court, Justice Jackson stated that if service members serve long enough, they may be entitled to both. As a result, advocates say significant changes in how veterans' education benefits are paid out could happen in the next few months. That ruling is pretty clear. You can use both, said retired Lieutenant Colonel Elizabeth Kubla, executive director of Syracuse University's Veterans Legal Clinic. When there is a significant ruling like this, then a federal agency needs to take steps to implement it. So it will be interesting to see what VA does next. I agree. I wouldn't be surprised if they start pushing out some news releases and so forth here very shortly, and I will make sure we keep on top of that. In a statement, Veterans Affairs officials said that they are still reviewing the decision. Lawyers involved in the case have said that as many as 1.7 million veterans could immediately qualify. Immediately is the word, and that's a big word. It's got a lot of letters, immediately. So that's now, right? So 1.7 million veterans could immediately qualify for more education benefits under the ruling, but acknowledge that it could be a while before anyone sees the money. Here's a quotation, then I want to pass it around. I fear that the VA will try to take a very narrow view of interpreting this, said Timothy McHugh, an attorney with the law firm Troutman Pepper, which handled the case. And if they do take that position, that will be the next legal fight, which that's exactly what you were pointing to, Chris. And do you think, and I just want to get your quick view on, do you think that the VA is willing to rock the boat at this point? Chris?
I don't know. And so, I mean, there's obviously a lot of money at stake here. They've been consistent in how they might have been consistently wrong, but they've been consistent in terms of how they applied. So, time will tell, I guess, and it'll be really, stay very closely tuned to see what comes out from the VA on this. I haven't seen anything just yet, but that's certainly going to be real interesting, even just in the tone that they take right away, to see if this is something that they're going to dig their heels in on, or something that they're going to actually see as the benefit that it should be.
Right. Randy?
Yeah, I don't know, dig their heels in on what. I mean, maybe it's just the interpretation, but the ruling is pretty clear. And on this article, there is a link to the actual Supreme Court ruling, so you can go through it and read exactly what the court wrote. I hope not. I hope they don't dig their heels in. What benefit does that serve the veteran community to dig your heels in and be obstinate towards a Supreme Court ruling that essentially says, hey, Department of Veterans Affairs, you've got this wrong for the last 20 years. That just doesn't seem like a helpful or reasonable way to move forward after clarity has been given by the Supreme Court. I would hope that there'd be a little bit of contrition, and that they would start by figuring out, who does this all apply to? Let's not even talk about money yet. We can figure that out through the budget process, but let's figure out who this applies to, because the article says up to 1.7 million people. That's a lot of people. And there's a lot of, record scrubbing that needs to take place. We need to figure out, who this group is, and then what they have and haven't used. And then we can figure out the money piece. Because frankly, some folks may not be interested in using this additional benefit that popped up. They may have aged out so far in their career, making good money. I don't have time for school. I've got kids, whatever the reason may be. They may not need the benefit. The benefit's there for those in need, not to be used under a mandatory pretense. So I think we got to figure out who's out there and then who wants to use it. And then we can talk about money. But what are you, Jason?
So here's my idea. We all know, right? So not everybody who utilizes the GI Bill to go to school is doing it purely because they want to get a higher education, right? They're incentivized to go to school to get a higher education because they're also receiving a housing allowance, right? So that's the reality, right? And to pretend that doesn't exist would be ridiculous. So here's an idea. Knowing that, what you could do is you could say, hey, we're going to offer a 30% payout on what average tuition and the housing allowance is nationally, right? Just average. So whatever that number is, 20 grand, 15 grand, whatever it is, 30% of that 12 months. And if you opt into the buyout, we'll buy you out, right? Or you can use it, right? You pick. And I'll tell you, you'll probably save money because there's going to be a lot of vets that qualify for it that go do it just to bring in the extra income for a little bit. So I think that would be a way to lower that burden somewhat. Especially because of how many years have gone by already, right? So you have a lot of people that will just opt for the payout, get the quick cash in the hand, get their money back that they would have earned. So don't think this is a free give me, right? I paid $100 a month back in 1997 for 12 months. What would it be today? It depends what you invested it in, but it's going to be more than $1,200, right? So, all right, let's move on. How much should student vets get is the question, and I'm going to read through this a little bit and pass it around. Most veterans attending college today with federal financial support use the post 9/11 GI Bill program, which gives you that 36 months of tuition payouts. To be eligible for post 9/11, troops need to have served at least 3 years on active duty since 2001. Eligibility to transfer the benefit to a spouse or child requires additional years of service. Over the course of a 4-year degree program, the total value of the post 9/11 GI Bill package can exceed $200,000 to the veteran, depending on the individual school and housing situation, right? So if you're going to an expensive school in the Bay Area in California, the school costs a lot and your housing allowance is high. If you went somewhere in South Dakota, it's going to be much less expensive. The Montgomery GI Bill isn't quite as generous. Eligible veterans can receive up to $2,358 for tuition costs a month, or about $113,000 over the course of a 4-year degree. There is no housing stipend. Oh, so I see how things get forgotten. There is no housing stipend or other financial help. I always, for whatever reason, I thought you got a housing stipend with Montgomery GI Bill. Did I just completely forget that, Randy?
I think that, yeah, that wasn't really part of the original program, but in some cases that wasn't applicable necessarily or as necessary, because there are some states and some universities that kind of do a matching where if you have the Montgomery GI Bill, there is a tuition waiver piece in place already. So that $2,300 that they're talking about coming in can be used to defray the cost of housing, and food and such. And that's the one calculation where if you have a university that's doing that's waiving tuition for the veteran, maybe under some sort of state program, and it's a lower cost of living area, that $2,300 can be more than what the VA would have paid in the form of a housing allowance. So
got it.
That's one example.
Yeah, perfect. So, and now here's the idea then, back to my 30%, right? So, I mean, that's still 10 grand. If they're paying out $2,358, right? And they do some sort of a payout, that would be something that could be advantageous for veterans and also save the government money. I'm just saying, because 10 grand in your pocket of tax-free money could help you get out of debt, could help you buy a house, could help you do a lot of things. So moving on. To be eligible for that benefit, veterans needed to serve at least 3 years on active duty and pay into the Montgomery GI Bill program at a cost of $100 per month for the first year in the ranks. Until now, VA officials have made veterans choose one of the two programs, saying the federal rules prohibit individuals from drawing upon both. But Tuesday's reversal of that stance by the Supreme Court centered around Mr. Rudsill, that 43-year-old veteran that we talked about in the prior video, had that all overturned. Now, the question is, again, we've heard some different time frames as far as a few months difference, and now we got some dollar figures as far as the tuition payable, $2,358 per month, which is a healthy amount. I think you can knock out some decent schools with that. So I want to pass it to you, Chris. What are your thoughts on the time frame based on just what we've read so far? Obviously, we haven't heard anything from the VA specifically, but this is you've dealt with big companies. Randy's dealt with big companies. You're turning a ship here. I mean, this is not an easy flip a switch and let's go, right? There's a lot of financial impact, a lot of people, a lot of heads to count. You need to make sure you get it right. What are your thoughts on a realistic time frame for implementation? And I'm going to say, barring the financial aspect, let's pretend that they can just print the money. Just because there's multiple facets to how much of a pain in the butt this is going to be for the VA. So let's take that one away. Besides the money piece, how long do you think it would take to implement something like this?
Best case, 6 months. Is my opinion. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'm with you. 6 months. What do you think, Randy?
Well, I'm a little more pessimistic. I think to have a fully functioning program that unwinds 20 years of incorrect policy, you're probably looking at 2 years. Putting aside money and putting aside any sort of additional litigation that happens with some sort of technicality on wording in this ruling. Honestly, the government is going, Jason said it right. There's a lot of head counting to do and a lot of record scrubbing to do. And a lot of these documents are old. A lot of them don't exist in digital format. A lot of them are archived in paper copy. So there's, what's that?
And microfiche.
Right, microfiche. So I don't know that 6 months is realistic without having a significant impact to the VA's mission. I mean, they're the ones that have objectively had the policy incorrect for 20 years. It would be on them to right the ship. I think it's a couple-year deal.
I think it's twofold, right? So you have people that are currently in that, you know, I've done 30 years in the whatever branch, right? 40 years, you know, you got some long-time service members out there, right? So you're going to have kind of the people that are still currently in, I think is going to be an easier nut to crack. So you'll have your military, current military community, and then you're going to have everybody that you screwed over. So there's going to be one that's going to be, I think, easier to implement. And I think they're going to have kind of this rollout, a phased rollout approach. I mean, that's the only way I could see doing it. Because I think from an organizational standpoint, and I'm going to want your thoughts on this, Chris, from an organizational standpoint, you want to have some wins. Look, we started the process. We're rolling it out. You guys are eligible now. Bam, this is when we can expect the next one, 6 months from now. And then you guys that really got screwed over, it's 2 years, to Randy's point. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
I think that's realistic, right? And maybe with AI, this would be a great experiment in how to leverage AI to do the right thing. I just hope it doesn't get tied up in courts and lawyers end up making the money that should be going to the veterans. And I know I'm saying that with an utmost of dramatic effect, but you know, this I hope the VA just takes positions that we don't like it, we don't agree with it, but you know, it is what it is, and let's do our best from a customer forward, you know, customer back perspective,
right?
And deliver, you know, the benefit in a way that's easy and quickly to, you know, easily understood in quick application. So I'm fingers crossed on this one.
I think, and I'm going to go ahead, Randy.
I was just going to say, in my opinion, it doesn't matter if the VA doesn't like it and doesn't agree with it. They're not in a position to usurp the Supreme Court, and they're not in a position to, you know, discuss what they like and don't like about law. They're there to implement law and to serve the veteran community. I hope they do so with a smile on their face once they digest this ruling.
But law is all about interpretation. And you know, the question is, how are they going to interpret it in a veteran-friendly way, or are they going to interpret it in a let's save some money way?
Right.
And go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to say, you also have to think that I think that in the circumstance we're in today, and I'll define that in a second, the veterans are going to win. Why? Because we're in an election year, and it's going to be, you know, and look, I'm zero political sides here, right? This is just, I don't care who's in office in this moment. It's the president's VA that's making this decision. So you either make a decision that's good for veterans or you don't. And if you don't, well, it's the president's VA. What do you think about that? So I'm not being political. I'm just being realistic. And it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat in office during an election year. The
Right.
departments, the cabinet better be doing good things for the constituency, or they're going to vote against that specific sitting president. My thoughts. You,
Yeah.
Randy.
I think unwinding this is going to have to be done in tranches. So there is a long lifespan of the veteran community that this affects. Let's look at folks that enlisted or began their service, let's say prior to 1980 and continued that 25-year career and ended maybe in 2005. This is going to affect both of them. This is going to affect them. I think maybe unwinding it by time frame. Veterans prior to 1980 will get to you first. You're aging out quickest. If you want to take advantage of this newfound benefit, we're going to get that to you first, and then maybe folks that 1990 and then 2000. I don't think they're going to be able to do it all at once, especially with the digital versus paper record thing that we talked about. There's so many head counting initiatives that have to happen and scrubbing. I think it makes sense. Start with the oldest first and work your way forward. I just don't know how else to do it in a fair manner. That's my thought.
All right. Well, with that, I think that we are really on top of it, keeping our eyes open for you as we see anything that comes out from the VA specifically with regard to time frames, dollar figures, all of that good stuff. I mean, here's the thing. I think that they basically called the Montgomery GI Bill dead a long time ago. And they were just waiting for it to actually, just put that last nail in the coffin. But here it is, resurrected. And I'm curious to see if there's going to be a different dollar figure associated with the monthly stipend. I mean, with the tuition cost payment amount as well. I mean, look at inflation over the last couple of years. Is that the true figure that they're talking about in this article? I don't know. So it's going to be interesting to see where we fall. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.